Hi everyone, I'm Paulette Morrissey from Tulip Square, and this week I'm going to show you how to make one of our popular patterns. It's called the Flip Fold Sewing Caddy, and it looks like this compact little thing. And you open it up, and it's got little compartments for all kinds of sewing gadgets. You've got room for like a little notepad and a pen. You've got parts to put 4 little bobbins of thread. You've got a little pocket here for some snaps or something small. You've got another pocket back here. You've got room for needles and pins, some of your sewing notions over here, and these little strips are for your little clips, and there's a pocket behind them. And it all folds up compactly to be about 5 inches square. 5 inches square. So anyway, I'm going to show you how to make this. It is pattern number 603 if you'd like to follow along, and you're going to head over to the sewing machine and make it. Let's go. Okay, to make the flip fold sewing caddy, you're going to need, what really works is 2 fat quarters. And I'm using these 2. And I've got batting in between. And these pieces are cut to 13 by 15, I believe. All the dimensions and everything are in the pattern, which you can download at the end of the video. For now, we're just going to take the 2 large pieces with a piece of batting between them. And I'm just going to do some real simple quilting on them. And what I'm going to do is just a real simple grid, little lines just going straight across. And I like to use a walking foot for that just because it doesn't pull on the fabric so much. So okay, you can see I've got a real quick grid design sewn on here. I think this will be my outside. And I'm going to go cut the pieces as it mentions in the pattern, and I'll be right back. All right, now we've got all the pieces prepped and ready to go. So we're going to set the 2 bigger pieces aside, and we've got these 2 little pocket pieces. I'm going to take the small binding strips that have already been cut to length and pressed in half like so. And I'm going to sew them to the wrong side of the pocket. I want this to be the right side of the pocket. After you've sewn them along here, you're going to turn this to the opposite side. And you're going to stitch down real close to this edge here. Now we're going to take these 2 small pieces of binding that are just a little bit wider than the other 2 that were for the pockets. And I'm going to sew them right sides together just along this long edge. Now you need to turn these right side out. Okay, now I'm going to go press these so that that seam is in the center like this. Alrighty, now we've got those are pressed. Set those aside, set the pockets aside, and then you've got a couple little pieces of fabric. We're going to take a little square, and I'm just going to fold it in half and give it a little bit of a press. Now you've got one other unquilted piece. This one was unquilted, and you've got a larger the unquilted piece. I'm going to put these together, right sides together, and I'm going to sew the 2 side seams. So you've got a side seam, a folded bottom, and another side seam. So I think we've got all our little pieces finished and ready to go now. Lots of little parts, but now you've got 2 quilted sections, and one is an inch wider than the other one. They're both the same length, but one is an inch wider. So we're going to take the narrower one of the 2. I'm going to use this for the outside of my case and this for my inside. So on the inside, I'm going to mark very lightly. I'm going to mark 4.5 inches in from each end. I'm just going to go over here and go 4.5 here and down here 4.5. And then on this one, which is going to be the outside of your case, on the outside of it, which is the white side, I'm going to mark in 5 inches from each end. All right, I'm going to work on this small one first. Okay, starting at one end, this is the inside of the case, and you can see the little line I made at 4.5 inches. I'm going to take this little flap I just sewed and the unfinished end right here, I'm going to put it just past that, just a little bit past it so it can get caught in a seam. Maybe less than 1/4 of an inch. And I'm going to make sure it's centered from side to side. And then I'm going to take this little piece, this little square that all we did was sew it in half with no stitching. I'm going to take that piece, and with the same open end, I'm going to line it right up on top of that other one, like so. So those are all right in line just like that, and I'm going to pin those in place. Okay, I'm going to pin these this way so that I can move this little flap. Right, like so. Those are pinned right where they go. And then I'm going to take this little flap and I'm going to get it out of my way for just a minute. I think I'll take another pin and pin it out of the way. Okay, I folded that back, so I've got 2 of these little ponytail bands. I'm going to take one and I'm going to stitch it about 2 inches from this edge and kind of centered at the top. So you can either do this by machine or by hand. I'm just going to find it's a lot easier just to put a couple stitches in it by hand. I'm going to start by securing a little knot. And then I'm going to make a loop. And in that loop, I'm going to stick this ponytail band. And I can pull it tight. And I can adjust the size of the 2 loops before I pull it real tight. Just like that. And then I'm going to just secure that down with a few stitches. And I'm not going all the way through to the other side. So if you sew this on by machine, you will be going through to the other side. I'll go over about 1 inch right there. I don't want. Then I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to make a little loop. I'm going to shove this through the little loop. And then I'll pull it tight. And then I'm going to stitch it in place with a few good strong stitches. And I just like to go, 5 or 6 times. You want it nice and snug. I don't want these going anywhere. Okay, now I'm just going to make sure the bobbin, the loops are fairly centered. And I'm going to start up here. Have a little bit of a knot. And I'm just going to tack this down with a couple stitches. Just like so, so it can't move anywhere. Now that we've got that done, we're going to take one of our pieces of felt. I'm going to fold it in half. They're both the same size. And then I'm going to flip this around. Remember where we pinned these down? I'm going to have to move these pins. I guess I should have put them this way. I need that side now. Okay. Now you see where you've got your raw edges from these 2 pieces. I'm going to fold this felt in half. And I'm going to put the edge of it right so they overlap about 1/4 of an inch. And then I'm going to stitch right across this edge here. Now you've got a couple little pieces of cardboard you cut out. Take the smaller piece of cardboard and just tuck it under this felt. And this is just like cardstock. Just like so. And I think I'm going to cut that a little bit smaller. And you may have to adjust this a little bit. This looks like, because I need to have enough space past it that I can sew. So I'm just going to cut a little bit more of it off. Maybe a 1/16 of an inch. Now I'm going to tuck it under there, keeping it even on both sides. Whoops. Like so. I'll put that down. Now on this next piece of felt, I'm going to put this here. And I'm going to stitch right across here. So I'm going through all 3 layers of felt and just missing that cardboard I just put in there. So now that you've got this sewn in place, I'm going to stitch down on top of it. Okay, then under here, I'm going to take the larger piece of scrap cardboard and just tuck it right up to there. And then I cut out like 5 or 6 pieces of just scrap felt, all of them the size of this cardboard or smaller, and progressively smaller, so that I've got this little stack here. I'm just going to kind of arrange them so that they're gradually getting smaller on the top, kind of. And this is going to be your pin cushion. I've got them all tucked in there, and then I'm going to bring this down, and then I'm going to fold this edge under so it's a little bit past that cardboard. And then I'm going to go stitch this down, and it ends up to be stitched right on that line that I made earlier. Now, right here, I'm going to take a piece of 1/4 inch elastic. I'm going to take a piece about, let's say, 6 inches long. Might not even need that much. Right about in the middle somewhere. I'm going to put it down right along the edge. I'm just going to go back and forth a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to go straight down, figure out what is straight down from there. And I'm going to stitch the other end. I'm trying to keep it as straight as possible. It's not perfect. That's pretty close. I think that's good. Stitch it the same way. Now what you're going to do, and you're going to put a couple of extra stitches in here, so you're making yourself several loops to hold things. So you can make like one really big loop and 2 little loops or 3 little loops, whatever you want. I'm just going to make several little loops. So I'm just going to push it up like that. But you can vary these. Just trying to keep them straight across. Then I'm going to go down here a little bit, and I'm going to push the elastic up a little bit. Make another one. And I'm going to do that again. Go a little bit further down, make another loop. Now I'm going to set this one aside for now, and I'm going to bring the other piece of the coat. We're going to start with, you have 2 pockets. One is 5.5 inches wide, and one is 5 inches. So we need the 5-inch pocket right now. And you're going to take one of these little strips that you sewed with the seam down the back, and you're going to lay it down just about 1/4 inch above the bottom edge of the pocket. And then you're going to lay the other one just above that, so there's just a little bit of a sliver of the pocket showing, just like so. So we're going to stitch these to the edge of the pocket, but staying close to the edge, so this will be caught up in your 1/4 inch seam later on, so you don't want this stitch visible. So I'm going to go pretty close to the edge, and I'm just securing the edges in place. Now I'm going to sew really close to the bottom edge of each one of these little, you just got these little straps here. I'm going to sew really close to the bottom edge of each. Now, just to keep things straight, I'm going to pin this pocket right here. So the bottom edge is even with the bottom of the case, and the sides are even with the sides. So I'm just going to pin that in place so it doesn't go anywhere. Okay, now we're going to swing around to the other end of the case, and we're going to take this little pocket, and I'm going to put it right here. And this is going to, I'm going to sew a couple of lines in here just to make a couple more pockets. I'm going to just pin that down. And now we're going to sew binding around the edges of these 2 pieces. And we're going to sew this the same way I sew binding on anything. So in case you don't remember, I will refresh your mind. I'm going to leave a tail of about 4 or 5 inches. I'm going to start sewing just about at the bottom of this pocket. Stopping about 1/4 inch before I get to the end. I'll take it away from the sewing machine. cut the thread, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold it up so the binding, so this edge of the binding and this edge of the case are going to be parallel and even. And then I like to take a ruler and just lay it up here along this edge we just did and fold this down to get a really perfect corner. Pull that out, and then I'm going to sew down to the next corner. Doing the same thing on each corner where I stop 1/4 of an inch before the corner, cut the thread, bring the binding up and around so it's parallel and even. I like to lay the ruler right there, nice and even. Fold this over so that it's nice and even with this line, perfectly even. And then pull this out and sew the next seam. And go all the way around until you get to your last corner. And I'll show you how we finish off the last corners. Okay, now when you get to the last corner, you do the same thing you did before, but you only sew it about 2 inches and then stop. Okay, now you've got this wide open spot here where you can connect the 2 ends. So what I do is I cut a piece off in the end, making sure that it's just a scrap piece. I open it out and I lay it at about where I think is the middle, and it's not critical at all. I'm just lay it here. Okay, I'm going to take my first piece, my first end, and I'm going to cut this one even with this edge of that little piece I just put in. One is going to get cut off right here, nice and straight it has to be. So that one's cut off right there even with this edge, and then I'm going to take my second end and bring it down and cut it off even with the other edge. And make sure you're only cutting this one layer. A little bit generous, I'm going to cut a tiny bit off. Okay, now you've got these 2 pieces. You don't need this anymore. That was just for accuracy. Now you've got these 2 ends. If you fold this whole thing in half, you can lay these 2 pieces and you're going to stitch them together diagonally. Just how you would finish binding when you're binding a runner or a placemat or a quilt. It's the same process, just a little tinier. Just going from point to point. It'd be pretty accurate. And before you cut it, you can test it and lay it down and make sure that it fits there. But it should if you measured it halfway decent. Then I'm going to cut this off, leaving 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You're going to finger press this little seam open. Nice and flat. Then you can lay this back down. And you fold that back down. And now you can finish that seam. Now I can remove the pins holding all the pieces in. And then I'm going to turn the binding to the right side and stitch it down all the way around. Okay, when you get close to the corner, stop and take your thumb and just push this corner up like so. Just like that. And then, when you get sew a little bit further, keep my needle in the down position. Take the next edge, fold it up, and tuck that first side in until you get a nice mitered corner. Turn and go around the whole thing like that. Just continue all the way around till you get back to the beginning, and then I just overlap the first couple stitches by maybe 1/4 an inch, just for like same as back tacking. And then you go ahead and put the binding on and finish the other half the same way. And we're getting close to done. Okay, now we've got all these pieces finished to this point. Now what you're going to do is take the piece that's slightly bigger. This one's a little wider than this one. And mark again where I have the little marks on the outside where I put them. So I just put pins in to make sure I'm on the right side. And then on this one, I'm going to put them at the same marks I made earlier. And you can double check these. Get them as close as possible. And you can double check them by folding everything and making sure they're all fairly centered, okay? So when you get them where you want them like this, what you're going to do is you're going to sew them together along the outside edge of the top binding, right along this outside edge here and right along this outside edge here. So I want to get the pin out of there. So okay, now you can see I've got both edges securely stitched in place, and this also stitched down this pocket edge, so you've got your little pocket here. It also sealed this where we've got everything is all stitched in place. And now you're going to flip the whole thing over, and what you're going to do, oops, my snip. Okay, now you're going to sew just on one of these edges so that the other end gives you a nice little pocket, just an extra little pocket that you might need. So I'm just going to stitch along one of these. Now all we have to do is put the closure on, and this will get folded up this way, this will get folded up this way, this will get folded up this way, and this will get folded up this way. So what I like to do, and it's up to you which of these two you want on top or not, but the shorter two, the narrower two, get folded in first. So this little pocket one gets folded in first, and the elastic ones get folded in. And then these two, whichever order you want. I kind of like this one first, and this one second. It goes like so. Like so. So what you're going to do, and I'll tell you why I use these. I use another one of those ponytail bands, and I tack it down over here, and then I put 2 layers of buttons, one on top of the other, to wrap it around and do this, because then as it gets fuller, it's got room to expand. If you put a snap on here or something like that, there's no extra room for it to expand when you start filling it up. With the elastic, you can keep filling up until this thing is way back here. So that's what I like to do. So I'm just going to hand stitch this little loop down, and I like to just fiddle around with it to see exactly where I want it. But I think I want it right here. Right there. So I'm just going to put a pin right where I want it. And there are one of 2 ways you can do this. You can either just stitch it down right there, or you can stitch it down and put a button on it to cover it up. So that's up to you. I think I'm not going to cover it up. I'm just going to stitch it down. And I'm not going all the way through to the inside. I'm just going through to the batting and the outside. We just go to the other side and sew the button on. And once again, I'm going to fold this back up the way I want it. Oops, one up, this one down, and now see if I put a button right about here. That'll be good. So it's snug enough now, and there's still plenty of room for it to move. So I'm going to put the button right there. Now this one is inside a pocket. Well, that was a brilliant move, wasn't it? Okay. Don't sew your pocket shut. Don't sew through the pocket. Now I like to put another button underneath the main button, just so it raises up the main button a little bit and you have more room for your ponytail loop. Nick down onto there. Nick is not a word, really. And that is finished. Now it goes like this, like this. And this gets that is this flip fold sewing case. It is pattern number 603. Okay, so now you know how to make the Flip Fold Sewing Caddy. It's very handy, and I'm just going to show you. I loaded this one up so you can have an idea of all the different things you can fit in it. Get this opened up, and you can see it holds quite a bit of things, and I don't really have it completely filled, but it does hold a lot. It's very handy for by your sewing machine. It's good for traveling if you need to make some kind of repairs and mends and fix hems and sew buttons on and all kinds of stuff like that. Also a nice gift for people who do sewing or crocheting or knitting and they want a little caddy to keep all their notions in. It's very handy for all that. So if you're interested in the pattern, you'll see a link right up here. It should be right up there where you can download the pattern in a link. And if you like this video, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and if you hit the little bell, you'll be notified when we put up a new video, which is every Saturday a new video goes up where we show you how to make one of our patterns or a quilt block or whatever we can think of. So we hope you like the video, and we hope you have a good day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.